He woke up to the smell of coffee. For a moment, Mark thought he was dreaming. He hadn't smelled real, fresh brewed coffee in months, not since his divorce, not since money got tight, not since mornings became a frantic scramble of homework, backpacks, and trying to drop off his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, before racing to work. But this morning felt different. Warm. Gentle. And then he heard footsteps in the kitchen. Soft, light footsteps. Mark sat up on the couch, the place he'd fallen asleep the night before, and that's when he froze. A woman stood by his tiny stove, wearing his oversized flannel shirt. Her wet hair hung in loose waves, and steam curled from the mug she lifted carefully from the counter. When she turned toward him with a shy smile, he felt his heart hammer. It was her. Olivia Hart. The CEO. The woman he had rescued, no, helped, he corrected himself, last night. And now she was in his kitchen. Before he could speak, she said something he absolutely couldn't believe. But we'll get there. Before the story continues, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment to support our channel, TruthLines USA, where real stories and powerful messages come to life. Your support helps us share more heart-touching tales like this one. Now, let's begin. Mark had never expected his life to shift in the span of a single night. He was just a tired single dad trying to make ends meet, working part-time at a grocery store after losing his job during company cutbacks. He wasn't bitter, well, not much. He told himself things could always be worse. He had Lily. He had a roof. And he had just enough determination to keep going. That night, though, had been cold and rainy, one of those evenings when everything felt heavier. Mark had just stepped off the late bus with Lily asleep on his shoulder when he noticed a car on the side of the road. A sleek black sedan. Hazard lights blinking in the dark. He would have kept walking, he wasn't the type to get involved, but something made him pause. Maybe it was the way the driver sat hunched over the wheel. Maybe it was the way exhaustion seemed to wrap around the person like a blanket he recognized all too well. So he approached. He gently tapped on the window, trying not to startle whoever was inside. The woman looked up, startled anyway, but her eyes were red, not angry red, but tired, overwhelmed red. "You okay?" Mark asked, shifting Lily slightly on his shoulder. "My tire blew out," the woman said. "And I don't know how to change it." Her voice trembled just a little. Not weak, just stretched thin. Mark helped, even though the cold rain soaked straight through his clothes. He set Lily inside the warm car so she wouldn't wake, then crouched in the mud to fix the tire. The woman hovered beside him, offering her coat, which he refused. When he finished, the rain had stopped, but his clothes were dripping, and he couldn't stop shivering. "Let me at least drive you home," she insisted. He resisted at first. "We're fine." "Really?" But she refused to take no for an answer. And that was how, 15 minutes later, she walked into his tiny, cramped apartment, because as soon as they stepped inside, Mark's world spun and everything went black. He'd passed out. The doctor told him weeks earlier that he needed rest, better nutrition, and fewer double shifts. But how could he afford any of that? He woke up hours later on the couch. Lily had tucked a blanket over him. And the mysterious woman, whose name he didn't even know then, was asleep in the armchair, still wearing his old flannel shirt because hers had been soaked. He never expected to see her again in the morning. Yet here she was. "Good morning," she said warmly, handing him the mug. "You fainted last night. I stayed to make sure you were okay." Mark blinked, still confused. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." She smiled softly. "I wanted to." She moved around the kitchen like she belonged there somehow, like she wasn't a stranger who had walked in from a completely different world. She had already made scrambled eggs, toast, and, somehow, managed to fix the broken knob on his cabinet that he hadn't gotten around to repairing. "I'm Olivia," she finally said, sitting down at the small table. "Olivia Hart." Mark almost choked on his coffee. "The Olivia Hart?" "Hart Industries." She nodded modestly. "That's me." He didn't know what to say. A billionaire CEO had spent the night in his broken-down apartment. He felt embarrassed suddenly, aware of every chipped plate, every creaky board, every sign of struggle he tried so hard to hide. "You must think I'm a mess," Mark said quietly. Her expression softened immediately. "I don't think that at all." He tried to gesture to the cramped room, the peeling paint, the bills stacked on the counter. "This isn't exactly classy." "Mark," she said, her voice firm but kind, "I grew up in a place smaller than this. I know what it's like." He glanced up, surprised. She wasn't joking. And then she said the words that stunned him, words he never expected from someone like her. "Let me help you." Mark shook his head instantly. "No. No, I can't accept charity. I don't want Lily growing up thinking people owe us anything." Olivia smiled gently but with a strength behind it that made him sit up straighter. "This isn't charity," she said. "This is kindness. And you showed it first. You helped me on the side of the road when you didn't have to. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't expect anything in return. You did it because you're a good person. Let me return that." He swallowed hard. He hadn't felt seen like this in years. Later that morning, after Lily woke up and shyly told Olivia all about her school project, Olivia asked if she could drive them both to town. When they arrived at the grocery store where Mark worked, she glanced around thoughtfully. "You do all this," she said, "and then you go home and take care of your daughter on your own. That's strength, Mark." He didn't know how to respond. Compliments weren't something he heard often. That afternoon, Olivia made a call. Just one. And within a week, everything changed. Mark was offered a steady job at one of Hart Industries' local distribution centers, full benefits, consistent hours, and pay that meant he no longer had to skip meals to make sure Lily had enough. He didn't want special treatment, so Olivia insisted the job be earned, not given. Mark interviewed like everyone else, passed all requirements, and was hired on his own merit. He couldn't believe it. The night he signed the contract, he called Olivia. "You didn't have to do any of this," he told her. "I know," she said softly. "But kindness doesn't disappear after one night. It grows if we let it." They talked for hours. About life, struggle, dreams they both set aside. Mark felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. And slowly, as weeks passed into months, Olivia became a part of their lives. Not in a grand, dramatic way, but in the small, meaningful moments, helping Lily study, inviting them to picnics, showing up with a bag of groceries when she knew Mark was too proud to ask for help. But Mark also gave something back to her, something she rarely received in her world of boardrooms and constant pressure. Honesty. Simplicity. A place where no one wanted anything from her except genuine company. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, they sat on the porch, listening to the crickets. Olivia sipped tea while Mark leaned back in his chair. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think kindness was just a nice thing people talked about. Something for greeting cards and charity events. But you've shown me it's more than that. It's a lifeline." Mark's gaze softened. "Kindness saved me too. More than once." She smiled, the kind of smile that felt like warmth spreading through the cold parts of a person's heart. In that moment, Mark realized something: kindness wasn't about fixing everything. It was about showing up. Caring. Choosing to help even when you didn't have much to give. And that choice can change a life. Months later, on a quiet morning much like the one when everything began, Mark woke again to the smell of coffee. He walked into the kitchen, and this time it didn't shock him to see Olivia there, hair loose, wearing his flannel shirt. But she turned to him with a look he hadn't seen before, hopeful, nervous, sincere. "Mark," she said, "I want to stay. Not because you need me, but because I want to be here. With you and Lily. If you'll have me." He didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, wrapped his arms around her, and whispered, "You're already home." Kindness has a way of weaving people together, strangers, friends, unexpected companions, into something stronger, something meaningful. It can start with something small, a helping hand on a rainy night, a moment of compassion towards someone who looks like they're carrying a heavy load. We never truly know how far the ripple of kindness will travel. But one thing is certain: every act of kindness writes a story. A story like Mark and Olivia's. A story that changes lives. So today, if you can, be the reason someone feels seen. Be the reason someone keeps going. Be the kindness that lifts someone up.